Good morning, everybody. So there's been a little bit of confusion about how half equations should be written. So what I want to do today is I want to explain a little bit more about how you can write half equations. Okay, so the exercise given to you last lesson was self-access 1.1. You are given four kinds of chemical equation, and from the four chemical equations you are asked to write half equations. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give two other examples of chemical equations, and I'm going to use those two chemical equations to write half equations. Okay, so the first one we're going to use is this chemical equation. 2Kbr plus Cl2 gives you Br2 and 2KCl. So this is a chemical equation, right? So from here I want to write half equation. Now before I do that, what I want to do is to break the ionic compounds, break them into ions. So this is K, potassium, and Br, bromine. Right? When I have a metal and a non-metal, I know that this is ionic compound. So I'm going to break it up, okay, to K plus and Br negative. Okay, this one, chlorine is a non-metal. So chlorine and chlorine, non-metal. This is not an ionic compound. Okay, this one Br and Br, non-metal also. So it's not an ionic compound. So I don't need to break it out. Okay, now this one KCl. Don't worry about the number 2. Okay, don't worry about the number 2 that is in front. Because the number 2 is just to balance the equation. Alright, so this one potassium chloride. Right, I know that potassium is a metal and chlorine is a non-metal. So what I want to do is to break it up into K plus and Cl negative. Okay, so when I look at what's on the left side of the arrow and what's on the right side of the arrow, I can see that this K plus exists on both left side of the arrow and the right side of the arrow. So I want to ignore the K plus. Okay, I want to ignore the K plus. So what I can see now is that my Br negative, okay, Br negative on the left side of the arrow has changed to become Br2 on the right side of the arrow. Okay, and I also noticed that my Cl2, right, is a molecule. Right, after the reaction finish, it has changed to become Cl negative. So Cl2, okay, has changed to become Cl negative. Okay, so I start with these two. Right, I start with these two. I see what's the changes. Okay, I see that there is a change. Br negative has become Br2. So I write it down. Br negative becomes Br2. And then I also see that Cl2, which is a molecule, has changed to become Cl negative, which is an ion. Right, so I also write that down before the reaction and after the reaction. Okay, and the arrow being in the middle. Okay, so now I want to write my half equation. So what do I do? In order to write half equation, we have to add E inside. Okay, so I have to add E to this first equation, Br negative produce Br2, and I have to add E into this second equation where Cl2 will produce Cl negative. Okay, so first of all what I want to do is I want to give this Br negative, I want to put a 2 in front here first. Why? Because there are two Brs on the right side of the arrow. Okay, there are two Brs on the right side of the arrow, and therefore I want to put a 2 to balance the Br first. Okay, and same goes for the chlorine. There are two Cls on the left side of this arrow, and therefore I want to put 2 in front of Cl negative, so that I can also have 2 Cls. Alright, so there are 2 Cls on the left side of the arrow and 2 Cls on the right side of the arrow. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is to add in the E. Okay, so my E is actually to balance the charges of the half equation. Okay, so for the first equation, there are 2 negatives. Okay, there are 2 negatives on the left side of the arrow. Okay, there are 2 negatives on the left side of the arrow. But on the right side of the arrow, there's no charge. Okay, so that means the charge is 0. Now, I want to add in my E, okay, to balance this 2 negative and 0. Where should I put the E? The obvious answer would be, I would put my E on the right side of the arrow. Why do I do that? Okay, so that, see, I separate this, so that my left side of the arrow, okay, the total charge is 2 negative. And now, on the right side of my arrow, okay, 0 plus negative 2 is also negative 2. So my charges are balanced now. Left side of the arrow, negative 2. The right side of the arrow also negative 2. Okay. Now we look at the second equation. Okay, again we want to compare left side of the arrow and right side of the arrow. I want to make this equation balance in terms of the charges. So I can see on the left side of the arrow, there is 0 charge. Okay, 0 charge. Now this chlorine, there's no charge, so it's 0. Whereas on the right side of the arrow, there is a negative 2 charge. So where should I put my E? E here, you must remember, E is electron. Electron is always negative charge. Right? So where should I put my electron? If I were to put my electron on the right side, then it will become even more negative on the right side, while the left side remains 0. So the obvious answer is I put my E on the left side of the arrow, and I put 2 E's there. Okay, so that my left side of the arrow is negative 2, and my right side of the arrow is also negative 2 charge. So the charge is balanced now. Right? So this is called a half equation, and this is also called a half equation. Okay, I hope you can understand it. Thank you.